This clip is brought to you by 8 Sleep Mattresses, the temperature-controlled Tesla of beds that automates your sleep. Sleep better and enjoy this clip.
Yeah.
Where do you think like some screaming joint pain comes from? Like, how do we go back and like find maybe the origin of it? And what is some of your ways to help solve that? Because I know there's some guys, especially like with the elbow, and I just think like, man, the elbow joint is really involved in like almost every single movement that we're doing in the gym, because we're always like holding a weight to some degree, pulling it or pushing it. So what are some things that you would advocate to help with that?
Well, the first thing is that pain is not simple. Pain can sometimes be completely developed from something else. So again, your knee pain might be caused from your foot. Your knee pain could be caused from your lower back. It could be caused from a hip issue. It could be caused, in my opinion, most of the time from a muscular imbalance or activation issue. The point is that when you get pain, in my opinion, for the average listener, look at the other side of that joint. So if your elbow hurts, it could be bicep tendonitis, right? Your pain might be back here, but the problem's here. Mm-hmm. And then you start, most of the time when I've seen people that have shoulder or elbow pain, I start digging into their training. They're doing too much isolated bicep work. And even when they do back work, they're doing so much bicep work that they're not even really working their back because their arm's dominant neurologically.
Yeah.
So you start looking at all those factors, you start seeing the pieces of the puzzle come together. So if you have elbow issues, look at the shoulder, look at your wrist, look at your forearms, start looking at the area as a whole versus compartmentalizing. Well, I only have pain in my right knee. Mm-hmm. Well, it could be your right hamstring. It could be your right glute. It could be your foot. So it sounds like, well, hell, how do I look that up? Trial and error. That's how you really figure everything out. You get smarter every time you figure out your own problem, and that's through research and training and experience and working around different kinks and bruises and dings. You start really realizing how your body functions and what really happens. So
if we think that way, then you can start to say, well, maybe if I use a different bar when I squat, right? Because then your hands are down here,
Yep.
like a cambered bar, safety bar. How do I take pressure off the elbow? What are some things I can do in my training where I can still do a lot of stuff that I love, but I can do less reps where my arm is in a weird compromised position?
So now you're getting into the meats and potatoes, a conjugate, and the thought process of why you train the way we trained, which is rotation of movement. So a lot of times if I see, say, a powerlifter, let's just say that's my background. If I see a powerlifter having an elbow issue and then I ask, well, how do you squat? Well, I squat with a straight bar. How many times do you squat with a straight bar? 2 times a week for the last 5 years. There's your fucking elbow problem, asshole. Right? You are in this position twice a week, straining your ass off, and you're asking me why your elbow hurts. So if he were to go safety bar, no elbow pressure at all, camber bar, minimal elbow pressure, and then a straight bar, and then rotated that around, there's no joint pain because you're changing the pressure gradient, and now the joints may still be squatting, but the specificity of the exact movement has changed just enough to give pressure in areas of the joint a break.
Or maybe skip a squat workout, for God's sake.
Skip a squat workout and just work on accessories. There's been many times I walk into the gym and I cut the core lift out and do the warm-ups and do the accessories. And I'll tell you why. Because in my opinion, for almost everybody's goal, the lacking issue is that they forget that GPP is the base on which everything is built. So if you're not fit enough to recover from a max effort exercise, eventually you're not going to do max effort. If you're not mobile enough, eventually the joint's going to be pissed off and not let you through the range of motion. The point is, every time you go through a cycle where you may PR and whatever you like to PR in, it could be a running distance or a lifting amount, you need to go back to the basics and reanalyze everything and figure out where are the shortcomings and then develop your training based on those areas versus thinking you got it figured out, because the body is a constant change, either through aging, mileage, could be all kinds of different factors. But I always sit back down when I get down, say like when I did that Tom Platz squat, it was a reanalyzation of everything that I did. I watched the squat, and as you could see in the video, there was no technical breakdown. I was just fucking trash.
Yeah.
That is mastery, because I was tired, my eyes were blacking out, my body wanted to die, and I did not change my form. That shows you the level of technical mastery, because the average person knees would have started bucking in at 15, back would have started rounded at 18. Mm-hmm. My body just said, I've had enough, but it didn't break form. And that's when you start realizing that the ability to use video to find your weakness at that level becomes nearly impossible. It's what you feel, because you can't see it in the video. It's not there. My knees didn't come in. My shins didn't go forward. My back didn't round. Where's the weakness? I mean, at that level, there's no fucking weakness.
Yeah.
Because if there's a weakness, it shows quickly once there's more ways than this, but to make it simple and quick, there's 3 ways you can see a weakness. You can see it by moving insanely fast. So if I say I want you to speed squat, but you got to move as fast as you can, you're going to make a form error if you don't have balance, like structural balance. But you're going to have to be a pretty good coach to see it because it's going to be quick. You can go heavy as shit. And then that's going to show you where your weaknesses are, because when you go into strain, there is no amount of coaching that happens at fight or flight. Or if I put, let's say 500 pounds in your hands right now to bench, you're going to show me what the problem is really fucking fast, right? Again, there's one other way. I can go very unstable. I could take a bar and hang a bunch of kettlebells on it and watch you squat. What are you going to do? You're going to do whatever you can to stay in that situation, which is going to show me all your strengths and your weaknesses. So you can go unstable, you can go quickness, or you can go heavy. Those 3 ways could show you as an assessment tool of what you need to be working on in general. That's what I utilize those for. So when you're maxing or you're doing speed work or you're doing shit till failure, don't use it as, well, I got 26 reps with 100-pound dumbbells on the bench. You tell me where the weakness was and what started to happen when you got tired. That's the information you should be getting, not the end result. And that's where I think people will mess up, is they might be testing what they're doing, but they're not assessing what they're doing.
I know you're probably going to mention the longevity aspect of things, but some people are very scared, especially if, let's say, they're a competing powerlifter. Number one, maybe they don't give themselves a long enough time horizon, but let's say that they do need to start working on certain weaknesses. Well, when you see some of your favorite lifters and they've just been squatting, they've been deadlifting, they've been benching, and you just keep seeing videos and videos of them continuing to do that and continuing to get stronger, it's hard for someone to think that I need to stop benching for now to get stronger at bench, or I need to stop deadlifting to get stronger at deadlift. It seems like I just need to continue specify. And one of the things a few years ago when I first heard about conjugate, when I'd hear certain people that were really prominent coaches talk about conjugate, they'd be like, how the fuck does this work? Because you're not specific enough. Like, it's totally getting rid of the specificity aspect. So why would somebody want to actually make that switch if they're actually going away from the movements that they need to do on the platform?
That's a good question, because there are some people that are anthropometrically built to constantly do those lifts. But I think if they were to run into Ed Cohen right now at nearly 60 years old and see that he can't wash his hair and his body's all banged up because he trained very specifically constantly, you might want to reconsider that. Because at the end of the day, performance, I know that most younger kids, all they care about is the number. But in reality, in my opinion, it's a balance of the number and the mileage. So if you, say, squat an all-time world record, but you need your knees replaced at 40 years old, you did not win. And that's the biggest thing I think people don't understand. But the specificity of the movement's not nearly as important as the specificity of your weakness. That's where the key comes in. So, for instance, the straight bar for me was fucking easy to squat with. It was like walking, getting my not getting my shoes on. We talked about that earlier. Getting my sandals on. Getting my sandals on in the morning. So there was very little room to develop anything new from that traditional movement. But the safety bar brought out everything. Because I have a taller torso and I'm 6'1", so to squat all-time world records, I didn't necessarily have the leverage that the shorter guys like Lillibridge and them had. So the safety bar made it worse. And so when I saw technical breakdown with the safety bar, I knew that's what needed to be fixed with the straight bar. So my point is that although the lift may not be specific, let's say safety bar back squat and regular bar back squat, they may have some differences, but if one of them hits your weaknesses more, how is that not specific to your weaknesses? And that's where everybody gets screwed up. They specify based on the event versus what their body needs individually. That's my answer to that, is if you're not mobile, but you keep hiding that, eventually it's going to call your trump card.
Yeah.
So you have to work your weaknesses whether you want to or not, because if you don't, it's either going to stagnate performance or it's going to cause injury. And those issues could come from anything. It could come from a muscle imbalance, flexibility imbalance, like, control, or, being able to balance the antagonist muscle groups. It could come all kinds of different ways, but you have to know where those limitations are and then be working on those areas. That's the real specificity that people need to be thinking about versus specificity of sport, right? I mean, and that's why the Soviets, again, and the Eastern Bloc countries made everybody a great athlete, then made them a good at one sport. Let's look at how many people go to the NFL, or I'll say Ohio State because they're 5 minutes from my gym. I remember sitting down and talking with Tressel for quite a long time. I used to train Earl Bruce, and he was the head football coach from 1979 to 1989, right before Cooper. And he was in his early 80s when I trained him, and this was close to 10 years ago. He took me in to talk to Tressel, and Tressel goes, "We don't look at anybody that's not a 3-sport athlete." And I thought that was interesting, right? I go, "Why is that?" He goes, "Because they have higher ability to get higher in the chain in football. If they're already good at this, this, and this, and then I specify them into football, they're going to get better by the time they're a junior or senior. But if all they've ever played is football, I only have what I recruited. I can't make them better because they're already too specific." So there's my answer to that fucking bullshit.
What you got over there, Andrew? What you cooking up?
I did want to go back to the like elbow pain when you're squatting.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, motherfucker, use a different bar. Like that makes a lot of sense. But my first thought is like, is that just like kind of putting a Band-Aid on a more like significant problem that needs to be addressed?
I really think that by me saying that, I think what I'm trying to get at is that stop with the specific mileage. So if I switch the bar and give my body 7 days break on that joint and it feels better, it's telling you it's being overused. So what I find is that if your training automatically already builds in an educated rotation of movements, then what you're doing is allowing recovery at each particular mileage point. The straight bar has particular mileage to it with elbows, knees, back that need to be rotated in order for it to recover, right? You can apply that to any sport that you want, but there's reasons why you have to have off seasons, transitional loads, different rep ranges. Not only because, one, the biggest reason most people quit training is because it gets fucking boring, but two, because it reduces the mileage at the joint while still allowing movement. So if I can squat, you know, I will take this to my grave, but like you take somebody that squats with a straight bar every week, week in and week out for 10 years, and let's say they survive. The guy that trains with multiple bars and strategically puts that straight bar back in when it's needed will be stronger in 10 years because they have all different types of strength, right? They're strong in all different areas where this person's only strong in one way. Athletically, if I bring a fireman in, for example, to the gym, and they're a proficient squatter with the safety bar, and they're a proficient squatter with the camber bar, and they're proficient free, and they're proficient with a box, and they're proficient narrow and wide, that person has way more transfer and way more athletic than a guy that's only practiced the same thing over and over and over again. That's all he's good at. Because as soon as that becomes not doable either through an injury or just because it gets heavy and the form breaks, they're not finishing it. Whereas the real reason I was able to take that 520 for 24 and not break form was because I was strong everywhere versus one spot.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you guys enjoyed the video, so like, comment, subscribe, and head to the Power Project Discord below. Talk to y'all later.